Hello and welcome to the semi-finals of Grand Prix Sao Paulo. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Lucas Escobeto, and here we have Ironworks versus Mardu Pyromancer. It's the Pyromancer deck that's on the play here, having finished higher in the Swiss, but Ironworks, definitely one of the talks of this and indeed almost every modern tournament at the moment, seems so potent. But Faithless looting on turn one, 2 copies of Lingering Souls going to the graveyard. This is the way that Jose Echeverria here can get a little bit of pressure on before maybe this Ironworks deck can get everything going.
Yeah, so game 1 configuration, Mardu Pyromancer is not well configured to fight this KCI deck. One of the ways it can win is exactly how this game is going. Just get a creature on the board turn 2, and from there on, just try to keep the number of artifacts on the opposite side under control by Call Against Command, by killing that Scrap Trawler on spot, by top decking discard spells to hit KCI itself.
Now, the trouble that it may be that Jose faces here, Pozzo already has a couple of copies of Engineered Explosives in play. They will be fantastic against Lingering Souls. He has the Ironworks. He also has Mindstone, and Mindstone, a really important element in the puzzle. A 2-cost artifact that can sacrifice itself to draw a card, or indeed it can just sit there generating mana. All of these things really important in terms of what the Ironworks deck's looking to achieve as it builds towards its big combo finish.
Yeah, KCI is an engine deck. It needs both mana and cards. Mindstone can be whatever you want. Usually cards is going to be your main restraining factor. So just being able to use it after you play your KCI, it's one of the reasons why this deck is so consistent.
So Echeverria here, just using his fetch lands, getting the mana that he needs in these early stages, and I think he does want to be getting these Lingering Souls on the battlefield here, at least for now. While there's obviously the potential that Mox Opal will be able to start exploding the mana potential from Pozzo not too long before he needs to have a threat on the battlefield.
All right, Young Pyromancer, another good option for Jose to keep the pressure on.
Though I like the pickup of Darksteel Citadel here for Pozzo. That's the 3rd artifact that means that Mox Opal will be live. And he also has the option to play a Mindstone here to get still further ahead on mana.
Yeah, he can explode on mana this turn.
Yeah, 2 Mindstones this turn. Crackline Ironworks already in hand. All he really needs to find now is a Scrap Trawler, and he's got potentially a few draws to be able to do so.
Yeah, he has the draws, he has time to say, Call Against Command, that could be a good one. If Pozzo exposes his KCI before he's able to commit a Scrap Trawler to the board, and Tatsis can just deal with it while it's in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the Mardu deck needs, some consistent disruption. Taking that first copy of Crackline Ironworks will make life a lot trickier. Yes, Engineered Explosives is fantastic against tokens, that much we know, but you know what? This is not a deck that's called Engineered Explosives deck. It's all about those Crackline Ironworks. Without them, going off in any meaningful fashion is just not a thing. Yes, you can generate some nice value loops with your copies of Scrap Trawler and so on and so forth, but without the Crackline Ironworks in play, this is just a deck that's making a lot of mana, but not an unending amount of mana. Yeah,
that's the reason why it's the namesake card of the deck. Now Hussein knows about Engineered Explosives, so you can bet he's going to be careful by how many Lingering Souls he's willing to flashback. And of course, Engineered Explosives would also take down Pozzo's Mox Opal, so it's not a free roll for him.
All right, so Echeverria, he's got the first piece of disruption and he has threats. And this is something, Taylor's all of his time. Disruption alone will not win you Magic games. You need to have that clock as well, because any deck worth its salt will be able to handle some amount of disruption if you give it enough time to. And this Mardu Pyromancer list, where it's really going to shine is by keeping that Pyromancer in play, generating additional threats, and being able to back up the disruption that it's able to provide with a clock that will actually end this game.
Okay, so we see Jose flashbacking his first Lingering Souls. He now has exactly 6 points of damage on board, which is the turn. It's a turn 3 clock. It's a clock that gives him 3 turns against Sebastian's 18 life. So that's enough reason for Sebastian to fire his first Engineered Explosives.
Yeah, it's not going to be straightforward for him to go off right now. Yet he's got a card draw from Chromatic Star when that goes to the graveyard. He can potentially use Mindstones to draw more, but speculatively digging with Crocline Ironworks when you're playing against a deck that you know has main deck artifact removal, a very dangerous proposition. And I guess that the question for Pozzo is, do I fire off my first explosives now, lose a Mox Opal, or can I afford to wait just a little bit longer?
Yeah, these kinds of turns, they what make the difference between a good KCI player and a great KCI player. He has both options. He can start digging now, or he can cast Engineering Explosives to try to buy time. I imagine a guy like Matt Naz is going to know what to do. Peugeot has been shown a lot of proficiency with that deck, so let's follow his path here.
So he starts off by sacrificing Chromatic Star. This is kind of the soft way of digging. He doesn't have Crocline Ironworks just yet, and he needs to find both an Ironworks and a Scrap Trawler, so a bit of work to be done here. One Chromatic Star replacing another. I don't like the idea of cashing in Mind Stones just yet, if he can help it, but these Chromatic Stars, they're a little bit more safe to get rid of in this early stage of the game.
Yeah, another land. I imagine Sebastian is looking for an Ancient Steering, KCR, or Scrap Trawler, or something like an Inventor's Ferret, which can tutor for those cards. So I think now he's committed to casting Engineer Explosives.
I mean, if you're Pozzo, at what point can you treat your life total as just kind of being binary? You're alive or dead, and use his life as a resource to buy additional time. Like, at the moment, 6 damage, yes, it's a lot. Leaves him on 12, though, and that's still well outside burn range. Looks like he is going to get rid of tokens here, but, like, how many tokens is he going to need to be along there the second time round before he plays the second explosives?
Yeah, so you have to imagine, Jose, we keep with the plan of flashing back Lingering Souls. Try to force the second Engineer Explosives. I think Sebastian, I think it's better to fire off that the Mass Remover right now. No reason to wait, really, since he has a second one.
Liliana the Veil, an interesting one here. This gives him an option to limit the number of cards in hand for Pozzo. He knows that there is one card in addition to the Engineered Explosives that he's seen. So this is really going to put Pozzo to the test. Does he want to get rid of the Engineered Explosives, which is obviously going to be good against Lingering Souls, or does he want to maintain a certain amount of mystery? And by cracking a Mind Stone here in response to Liliana the Veil, it means that he can make a better choice in terms of maintaining a little bit of mystery. He's not so forced to ditch the explosives if he doesn't want to.
It appears that the line he chose, since Jose was not making any more additional tokens this turn, he thought that's all the time he's going to get anyways. Especially against a Liliana that is crushing the number of cards he can hold in hand.
Yeah, the Liliana does mean that the plan of just sort of sitting back and waiting and hoping to get up to critical mass of cards gets a lot trickier. There's also a copy of Cologan's Command in Jose Echeverria's hand here, so sooner or later he'll be able to snipe out an artifact that's in play. I can't imagine that Pozzo is going to leave a Crocline Ironworks or a Scrap Trawler in play for too terribly long. He's going to try and have one gigantic turn if he can get away with it. But if there's enough pressure, he may have to do something a little bit riskier. Terrarion and the Bauble coming into play there.
Pirate Spellbomb.
I don't know what it is about this Pirate Spellbomb for me this evening. Somehow or other, endless, nameless, that one. It comes along and it immediately shoots down Young Pyromancer. That meaning that now Echeverria, while he's got Disruption, he doesn't have any kind of a clock. And potentially that means that Pozzo might have a little bit more time to work with. Empty-handed, though, he's going to be relying very heavily on the top of his deck.
Yeah, Jose has still a lot of resources at his disposal. He's going to have Liliana threatening an ultimate and a few turns from now. He still has Lingering Souls that he's able to flashback. He might be considering just passing the turn and try to activate that Cologan's Command during Sebastian's draw step.
Yeah, blow up an artifact and force a discard before that card is going to be able to be cast by Sebastian Pozzo.
Yeah, there are not any juicy targets on Sebastian's side right now, so maybe that's the turn he's going to do a few turns down the road.
Cologan's Command. For a long while, there really weren't too many main deck artifact removal spells in Modern, but the sheer versatility of this card means that it is possible to have artifact removal without it really being at too hefty a cost here. Lingering Souls flashback now, meaning a couple of Spirit tokens. And Liliana the Veil does tick up. Discarding a Faithless Looting. not the end of the world here, really.
No.
Obviously want to hold on to that Kolaghan's command, but equally getting Liliana's loyalty up a little bit higher does mean that there's the potential even for a Liliana ultimate, and that really does set back Sebastian Pozzo quite severely.
Sebastian seems to be in a spot where he's going to need to top that KCI, sacrifice that Rarian, and find the scrap trawler with it. So it's back-to-back runners.
And when you're testing, when you're practicing, when you're preparing with this kind of Ironworks deck, one of the things that is sort of really useful to get a bead on is how realistic it is it to go off from different situations. So practicing going off with fewer than an optimal number of cards in hand. Basically putting yourself on a clock. You don't necessarily need to be playing against a live opponent in every situation. Just going, all right, can I go off with 2 cards in hand and just a Terrarian and a Mind Stone? I mean, it's possible, but how likely is it? And the only real way to get a good feel for that is to play a lot of games.
Yeah, it's a good deck to good fish in your own kitchen table.
So there's a Mirror Retriever, and, well, this is a big one. Ica Wellspring is one of the cards that does help just grease the wheels in terms of what the Ironworks deck is doing. When it comes into play, it draws a card, and if you ever find a way of sacrificing it, I don't know, cough, 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 Crackline Ironworks, drawing you a card again. So now, actually, Sebastian Pozzo has a pretty exciting hand to work with all of a sudden.
He found Mirror Retriever and Scrap Trawler this turn, so that's realistically all the cards he needs to cast. Now it's a matter he's going to do able to do it in time before that Liliana takes a card out of his hand and Jose finds another discard spells. So he only has 3 mana available for him this turn, so he's not going to be able to use Mirror Retriever and cast something else.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough spot because Liliana plus Kolaghan's command will get 2 cards out of Sebastian's hand here. So there's definitely a temptation to play one of these. Goes for the Scrap Trawler there. I mean, I guess that the difficulty is that had he kept both cards in hand, there wasn't going to be a good target for the artifact removal half of Kolaghan's command. So, I mean, it might have even just been 2 damage upstairs, which is kind of a weird thing to think about.
Yeah, Scrap Trawler is going to get something when it dies. He's still going to need to top deck a second one or a KCI, and has to find the mana to do all of that in a single turn. He just, because of that Liliana, the plan of holding resources in his hand to go off in a big turn is not going to work. And
this has been a really interesting game because it's not been as if like having artifact removal is enough to stop this combo deck. It's not even as if only discard is enough to stop the combo deck. It's having access to a little bit of both plus the clock at the same time. Sebastian Pozzo being pressured on so many different fronts here that it makes him very, very slim to go off without a really good set of draws here.
Yeah, Liliana of the Veil is a card that not all versions of Mardu Pyronancer play. I think it was Reed Duke and Jerry Thompson who chose to add that card to their deck at Grand Prix Vegas. We can see all the power of it when the Mardu Pyromancer player is on the play, or when he's facing a combo or control deck, where the discard mode of Liliana adds a lot of pressure to their opponent.
Alright, so Kolaghan's command is going to destroy an artifact in play, and then we saw a little gesture towards Pozzo as well. I guess that likely means a discard here.
He gets to return something with Scrap Trawler, but now that's a card that Jose is going to force him to discard with that Liliana.
Everything working out rather nicely here. Jose playing his last card in hand, so ticking up. He doesn't even have anything left to discard. Liliana on 6. And it's not even as if it's a slam dunk that Jose has to activate the ultimate here. He could keep Liliana in play, continue to force discards, and then threaten to keep Liliana around after having separated things into 2 piles.
Yeah, I think he's going to judge that he has enough time to make that exact line. I mean, if KCI can win from this spot, then the deck truly is incredible.
Yeah, Jose here, very much in the driver's seat. I mean, the last best hope for Sebastian Pozzo here is at least that Mind Stone gets him draw a card, and he now has access to 5 mana just off his lands, meaning that sacrificing the Mind Stone to draw something, definitely a reasonable thing to at least consider.
Yeah, as you can see, he chose not to do that during his own turn. So his reasoning here is that he's going to do it end of step, where the card is protected against Liliana. and that might actually force Hussein to activate the ultimate.
All right, both players living off the top of their deck, but very different expectations for each of them. Jose gets to have a cheeky attack in here. Those two spirits just coming on in. They have nothing to worry about in this game. They're just merrily flying through the air, having a little nibble on Sebastian Pozzo's ear, and a lightning bolt slowing, speeding up the clock a little bit even more for Echeverria here.
He has been attacking for so many turns, and Sebastian is 2 at 9.
Okay, so Liliana does tick up here, going to 7 loyalty. Neither of these players have cards in hand.
Okay,
but
nice time to go off. Has to be KCI into Scrap Trawler here, I think, for Pozzo.
Draw a card. I think that may have been a Scrap Trawler. Oh, sorry, that's a Terrarium.
They look close.
Buried Ruin, though, kind of a nice pickup. Does have potential to find you an artifact when you desperately need it if you've got the spare mana to be able to work with. So often we're talking about this Card Ironworks deck as having an excess of mana and cards being the issue. Right now, though, even mana not super abundant, having to rely on just old-fashioned lands and a Mox Opal, which is kind of where all of us are most of the time when it comes to being able to make mana.
Big uphill battle for Pozzo, for sure. So Pozzo now is thinking if he can activate his Buried Ruins and try to return something that's going to get him ahead of resources, or if he's going to make the same play of passing with no cards in hand and then try to draw 2 cards his next turn. But now he can be sure that Jose is going to use the Liliana, so he also has to figure out what he can do with half his permanents.
I mean, I guess that the small comfort that Sebastian Pozzo has is that if his permanents do get separated, there are some of them that he kind of doesn't mind going to the graveyard. When the Ica Wellspring, for example, going to the graveyard, he will get to draw a card off it, and that means that splitting these piles is going to end up potentially a little bit weird. Yeah,
that's actually a very good call, Tim. I didn't even pay attention to that line. So he would get a card from the Wellsprings, a card from Terrarium, and whatever he chooses to return with Buried Ruins, and plus his draw step. So yeah, that's actually a lot of resources that he can have in his hand out of nowhere.
So Bedlam Reveler coming along from Jose Echeverria, he can always just choose to keep Liliana up to other things here. 3 cards drawn off the Bedlam Reveler, and to be honest, almost the worst cards he could have drawn. One of the issues that Mardu Pyromancer has, at least in Game 1 against Ironworks, is that the variance between the good cards and the bad cards that can be drawn very, very high indeed. Dreadbore and Terminate, they just don't have any targets. There's literally nothing that they can do against Pozzo. The best they can do is kill one of Jose's creatures, and I'm not sure that there's any practical reason for that beyond, I guess if you've got enough Bedlam Revelers in play, you might trigger more prowess than the creature that you're killing.
Yeah, say he could target one of tokens with Dreadbore, respond with the Terminate, and that would be an extra damage compared to just stacking with the Spirit token.
Yeah, I mean, but if that's the best you can do with your 2 removal spells, then quite frankly, you need to do a little better. And after sideboarding, we will see Echeverria be able to do much better. Surgical Extractions in the sideboard, Campbell Console Allocation in the sideboard, Engineered Explosives in the sideboard, Wear Tear in the sideboard, Collective Brutality in the sideboard. Winning Game 1 means that Mardu Pyromancer could be in very good shape to win this entire match.
Yeah, Paredes definitely respects the power of KCI in his deck building. He doesn't have any of the hard counters like Leyline of the Void or Stony Silence, but he has Kambal, which is something that Pozzo cannot loop through. He has extra discard, he has extra removal, he does have an Inhue Spellbomb to stop the combo, plus, as you mentioned, Surgical Extraction and that Wear and Tear. So it's a good disruption package. It's certainly going to upgrade his removal spells that has in the main deck. I have to expect that sideboard games are going to be a lot tougher for Pozzo, which is why it's a big deal if Jose can pull off that Game 1 win here.
I do stop and wonder how different things would have been had Sebastian been on the play here. The Mardu Pyromancer list was able to snipe things from hand at just the key moments early doors, and if it had worked out the other way around, it may have been that Pozzo was going to be able to go off with slightly less disruption, slowing him down here. So this is 6 loyalty counters have been removed from Liliana, and it looks like Pozzo, considering if he wants to make any kind of a response, perhaps using Buried Ruin now in order to try and get something going here, because once the piles have been chosen, yeah, that's kind of that.
Yeah, so Pozzo Peugeot, he knows the timing of where he needs to activate that Bird Rain. That would expose him to a discard spell, but there's nothing he can do against it at this point.
So he gets back a Crocline Ironworks. Makes sense. That's kind of one of the limiting factors on the combo. So we have...
So can Jose keep him off 4 mana next turn? He can choose a bio with 2 lands and 3 lands, so... that's interesting. That's a very difficult position that Jose is in right now. He knows Peugeot going to get another draw step. He's probably going to get a card of Wellspring, so he has to choose it in a way that's not worth it for Peugeot to keep that into play.
Yeah, this is...
Okay, yeah, it's very interesting.
I mean, this is one of the reasons that I love Liliana of the Veil. I mean, to me, it's reminiscent of the good old days of Fact or Fiction, that you had a very powerful card, but it's a very powerful card involving choices, and when you have choices, it means that it rewards good players playing well, and as a Magic player and a Magic commentator and a Magic fan, I like it when good players rewarded, and anything that involves additional choices has the potential to really highlight that.
Yeah, I think Peugeot is going to keep the bio that has more mana. Since the Terrarian also has a trigger when it goes to graveyard to draw him a card, doesn't really matter. Okay, compared to Icaro Wellspring. Oh!
What was the pickup there? I didn't quite see.
Might have been Terrarium or Scrap Taller. Their arts are so similar.
Now,
He needs a mana.
I think it is a Scrap Trawler there. Now, currently that Mox Opal not active because there's only 2 artifacts in play. This is going to be very close indeed. I don't think that Sebastian is going to be able to get up to the mana that he needs here. Inventor's Fair, the land off the top.
Yeah, he doesn't have 4 mana right now. So Jose did a good job in separating the bios to make sure that Mox Opal was not going to be active. So there was never a choice for Sebastian to have 3 mana after that ultimate. He could potentially have an extra mana, but it's going to take him a turn, and it's going to be hard to do with that active Liliana of the Veil. So which again shows which was a wise choice for Jose to keep it around for an extra turn before activating the ultimate.
So Terrarian getting sacrificed here. Basically, Pozzo, knowing that he can't have the big turn that he wants, instead choosing to dig a little bit, draws an Ica Wellspring. Now he has got 2 mana floating here from that Terrarian.
Yeah, it's another card, so he can protect his hand against Liliana. And it's another artifact on board to potentially activate his Mox Opal next turn.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that Sebastian needs to be careful of is not putting himself in essentially the exact same position that he was in this turn, of not quite being able to get everything going. I mean, casting the Ica Wellspring looks pretty good to me here. It may be that there's something I'm missing. I'm certainly by no means an expert in this deck.
Yeah, his other option would be to cast this Crab Trawler right away. No, all right. That's another way to keep the cards rolling into his hand.
Oh, look, we found a use for Terminate. Hooray!
Yeah, the best possible use here for Jose. He might have had the option to wait his own turn to get an extra prowess trigger, but he thought it was more important to have mana available since he has a Faithless Looting in his graveyard.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about the lack of power of creature removal, I mean, Dreadbore especially at sorcery speed, kind of awkward. He had to find an opportunity to kill a Scrap Trawler where it was not able to be part of a combo, and that's exactly what he did. He put enough pressure on that it forced Sebastian into an awkward line of play there. So Jose Echeverria did pick up the first game there, and Sebastian Pozzo, they have deck lists. He's going to have a look at the sideboard, and he's going to see a lot of cards that could be a big problem for him here.
Yeah, so Jose has all that disruption we talked about, but not, say, the hardcore hate cards against KCI. I think Sebastian is used to playing against just disruption. His options here are the Worm Coil engine to diversify his threats. Girpur Ether Grid is something in the same line. But after that, he doesn't have a lot he can bring in here in this particular matchup.
I mean, I guess Pyroclasm's just good against all those tokens if you decide you want to go down that path. But one of the things with playing a combo deck is how many cards can you afford to take out? Because realistically, he wants to at least have the potential to combo, right?
Right, and if he was in a situation where he didn't have access to his opponent deck list, he might be pressured to bring that Beast Within and Nature's Claim just as a hedge against Stony Silence, Iglay Land of the Void, or or things in that regard.
I mean, as things stand, he's going to have to play around the likes of surgical extraction. I mean, he has to have a way of killing Camball console allocation, because a Camball in play is essentially game over for him unless he can remove it. So in that regard, something like Pyroclasm or your Lightning Bolt, Galvanic Blast, similar, seems important.
A couple Lightning Bolts feel like a safe choice for him. His other options would be to queue the Camball with an engineered explosives, but that does take a lot of mana.
Yeah, having to produce 3 different colors of mana to get Sunburst on 3. Definitely doable. You've got your Terrarians and so on and so forth, Chromatic Stars and the ilk, but you don't really want to have to be using that many resources to kill one creature, because those are resources that you're then not able to use to kill your opponents.
Yeah, if you consider all those factors, you can see how games 2 and 3 are going to be so different from how games 1 usually play out. Jose Luis is trading his useless cards, his creature removal, for a lot of disruption and for a Camball that can stop Pegasus combo code and a surgical extraction that can win the game by itself. Sebastian now has to dilute his combo deck just to have answers to Jose's answers.
And Paulo Vitor da Rosa has a lot to say about sideboarding. I mean, it's something that he has clearly thought a lot about, has a lot of opinions on. And one of the elements that he says that sort of shows a player has really leveled up in their sideboarding is sideboarding against what you think your opponent's game 2 deck is, rather than simply saying, well, this is what they had in game 1, this is a problem, I'll bring in things just to deal with that. And there will be some levels here, some mind games, because if it works out that Sebastian only brings things in to deal with what Mardu Pyromancer is game 1, he's in trouble. But likewise, if Jose has nothing to deal with, for example, that Wormcoil engine, that is a very different line of attack that Sebastian could potentially employ.
Yeah, we get to take a peek at what Sebastian is doing. He's taking away one of the Pirate Spell Bombs. As we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, both Wormcoil engine and Gear Pro Ether Grid can also work as win conditions, so he's not too exposed by doing that. He also brought in the Lightning Bolts as an answer to Camball. And he took away some Terrarians, some extra artifacts that maybe he considers to be redundant.
Alrighty, Roo. So it looks like these players just about finished sideboarding. We'll be able to get onto our game 2 soon. Terminate, one of the cards that Jose Echeverria has slid to the front here. Now, obviously, Dreadbore at sorcery speed, it's not an exciting form of disruption because it's so slow. Terminate, we saw it do good work at instant speed in that first game, killing off a Scrap Trawler, but what proportion of the time is it going to be able to catch a Scrap Trawler kind of with its pants down, if you will, without a lot of extra support going on?
Yeah, since Jose has Lightning Bolt and that it is a flexible answer in the sense that it can kill the Scrap Trawler and can also go to the face when he needs to, I think that's going to be all the creature removal he has. Could Against Command can also kill Scrap Trawler and something else, so I would be surprised if he kept any of the Terminator or Dreadbores in his deck post-board. Fatal Push is another card he's taking out. Collective Brutality doesn't have a lot of targets.
Yeah, it's convenient for Echeverria that he has so flexible a set of cards that it means that he is able to really tailor. And the number of cards that he has the potential to bring in this matchup is pretty colossal. Normally, the most that I would expect to sideboard in most matchups is 7, 8 cards, and that 8 cards feels like a lot. I mean, I think that when it gets right down to it, in terms of sideboard cards, I mean, Goblin Rabble Masters aren't very exciting. Molten Rains don't do it too terribly much, but that leaves you 10 other cards that are reasonable considerations. Maybe 9 if you remove Collective Brutality.
Yeah, when a mid-range deck can use its sideboard so well, you know it's going to be strong option post-sideboard.
These players just shuffling up. We are untimed in our top 8, as I'm sure you guys noticed during the quarterfinals, which kind of went on a little bit. Sebastian Pozzo, he's got an intricate deck, and given that he's got the time, he's going to use it to make sure that he doesn't make mistakes there. On the other side of things, we have obviously got another matchup going on. It's Leonardo Giucci on Abzan Traverse up against Tiago Casasanta on Tron. That one still in progress. We may be able to bring you a few updates from that going on, but we're not going to be doing too much in the way of time walk magic, because you know what? There's no time for that. We want to make sure we get you straight on to the finals, get to see a champion before the night is out.
So I remember the first time I heard about KCI, it was through a Semper D article, and I didn't understand a whole lot of it, but I knew it was powerful. So the first thing I did, I logged into Magic Online and started adding Stony Silence to all my sideboarded decks in Modern.
I must admit, I do have my current pet deck in Modern does have a lot of copies of Stony Silence in the sideboard, along with some Surgical Extractions, just because this is one of the lists that, given that there are some cards that are so good against it, it feels foolish to not at least consider having access to them.
You see, maybe he found just the right balance of having flexible answers and a sufficient number of those that he doesn't need to go too deep into KCI hate.
All right, so Pozzo starting things off here with, he's got a Mox Opal on turn 1 alongside that land, and Terrarian potentially on this first turn. I guess there's also various stars, but the Terrarian, given it comes into play tapped, you kind of want to play it on one of these early setup turns so that it's ready to use if you need to later on.
He doesn't have a third untapped mana source to play next turn. So maybe he's going to have one more turn of setup of casting Mind Stone and Chromatic Star, depending on what he draws. Who say, now that could be Faithless Looting or a discard spell. I know if I was Puzzo, which card I was hoping to be in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, early and often figure out what your opponent's got going on and try and stop them in doing it, because while this next turn is unlikely to see any sort of going off, 2 copies of Scrap Trawler here. Now, you know, flag very clearly raised to Jose Echeverria that he needs to be very, very careful in these subsequent turns. The fact that he knows that there's another Scrap Trawler coming and there's, you know, good acceleration in that hand, he's got to be considering that it could all be over very, very fast in this game too.
Yeah, another consideration would be the Mind Stone to try to restrict Puzzo's ability to generate mana, since he currently doesn't even have a second mana source on board. But of course, Scrap Trawler is such a powerful creature in this engine that he's gonna snap take it right away.
Yeah, and I mean, even casting Chromatic Star turns on Mox Opal, any land here means that almost the entire hand of Sebastian Pozzo getting played here.
Whoa! Surgical Extraction!
Big reaction from the crowd here. This is an absolute hammer blow against the Ironworks deck. Surgical Extraction on Scrap Trawler. There are so few ways for this deck to be able to combo once it does not have access to the Trawler. Yes, Clan Ironworks can generate a lot of mana, but now if Sebastian Pozzo wants to win this game and get back in this match, he's going to have to do it very much the hard way.
He's going to have to attack with his Mirror Retriever and Worm Coil Engine. One of the ways KCI can beat a Surgical Extraction is trying to respond with it with, say, a Buried Ruin. Puzzo is nowhere near close to being able to do that. So yeah, it's basically a knockout punch. Jose Echeverria can be 99.999% in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a potential for an Ether Grid. There's still a potential for maybe some Worm Coil Engine beatdown. But right now, Jose, in addition to having removed 4 of the absolute linchpins of Sebastian Pozzo's deck, he also knows exactly how his opponent's sideboarded.
Yeah, so he saw both ways that can Puzzo make up a plan B. Puzzo is still not going to be able to cast Mind Stone this turn right away. He's going to have to resign himself to playing 2 more Chromatic Star and a Terrarian.
Yeah, this a sad end to the tournament for Sebastian Pozzo. Someone came prepared, and when you do come prepared, there is ample opportunity to make this Ironworks deck seem like it's a scrap heap.
Yeah, Gear Provider Grid would be ideal draw for Puzzo 2 turns from now.
I mean, as things stand, Jose Echeverria did pay a price for having this start. He kept a 1-land hand knowing that it had Inquisition and Surgical Extraction. If that Inquisition had not managed to hit one of the key combo pieces, this hand would have been pretty awful. Yeah,
so you can see it's such a powerful combo for Jose that it's wise for him to keep a 1-lander, but now he's not finding a second land. Do we have a game here, Tim?
I mean, it's a very real question, and I don't have a good answer for you. We've got triple Terrarian, Mind Stone, and a bunch of lands versus a hand full of gasoline, but only the 1 land to cast any of it.
Sebastian Pozzo in this position
draws into a forest off that first Terrarian. I mean, yes, he's got a Pyrite Spell Bomb, so that means that Kambal's not looking quite so good, but no more land. This is painful.
That's madness.
So, Jose here saying he's going to his end step. It may be that Pozzo wants to do something in that end step, drawing a card potentially with one of his card drawing artifacts. As things stand, though, he is just digging. If he can find a Gira Ether Grid, can he snatch a game where his main win condition dead in the dust here?
Okay, so he has Inventor's Fair plus other 5 mana. That's one short of Wormcoil Engine that he can tutor for.
Well, I mean, he's got a he's got a Mind Stone as well, so he has 6 mana available.
Right, but he would have to sacrifice the Inventor's...
Oh, I see. Sorry,
right.
yes. Just,
right
just natural draw it.
Okay, who say he needed that second lane.
He has found it. A big deal here for Jose Echeverria. Even with that second land, he needs to figure out what the best spell to be casting this turn is.
That's exciting. I spoke too soon. It's a lesson for me to never doubt on Pozo again.
99.99 does seem like a pretty over the top percentage, but I mean, I would still say that even with everything going on, even with all those land drops missed, Jose in pretty reasonable shape here. If a Gira Ether Grid comes down, that's where things could get real messy.
Yeah, Pozo has so many cards to cycle through. You have to imagine he's going to find the mana that he needs. Or he can just straight up find a Wormcoil Engine or the Gira Ether Grid. Yeah,
Ancient Stirrings, that will definitely help him find a Wormcoil Engine. Not so good for finding a Gira Ether Grid, but you can't have everything. Buried Ruin the pickup there, so ways of getting artifacts back from the graveyard. I mean, I recall a moment in Game 1 where you kind of said, well, if the Ironworks deck can win from here, it must be quite the deck. I kind of feel the same way about this game too.
Okay, now the jury's settled, it is a good deck.
I mean, if it can win from here, then yeah, absolutely. Crackland Ironworks on the top, alongside various other options. All of those options fetchable with the Ancient Stirrings. The Ironworks, I mean, I'm not quite sure how good it is now. I mean, it lets you accelerate out threats, but you've only got the Wormcoil Engine as something that really needs any acceleration at this point.
Yeah, the benefit of Ironworks would be to cycle through the Ico Wellsprings that he has into play, any feature run he draws. Mindstone just more a straightforward card for him to have in the spot. Good,
clean and easy cycling there. Buried Ruin getting picked up. Here's the Mind Stone. Not, I mean, I guess you could cycle a Mind Stone there in the hope of drawing an Ether Grid, but no real pressing need to just yet. Liliana the pickup, that would have been a good way to punish a single card being left stranded in hand, though of course right now Jose is still very short on mana, only found his second land this very last turn. Sebastian Pozzo trying to find a way of turning things around after a brutal surgical extraction early doors from his opponent. Here comes Mardu Pyromancer. With a little bit of help, that one will be able to do some good work, but there is a Pyrite Spellbomb in play, and that's a pretty juicy target for it.
That Liliana could be huge. It's a way to deal with the Wormcoil Engine, and then he only has to deal with the tokens that are left in the way.
So yeah, Reducey Wormcoil Engine getting fetched up with that Inventor's Fair.
Pozo also has that Bird Ruins to bring it back whenever he wants to. Man, that's an interesting game.
How much hate do you need? Ico Wellspring to pick up that turn. Nice little draw there. 7 mana available. First off, kills off the Young Pyromancer.
Good choice.
Then casts a Wormcoil Engine. On the board now, the clock very much in Sebastian Pozzo's favor here. Still no third land here for Jose Echeverria. This is crunch time for him.
So he doesn't have enough to cast a Balan Reveler. I mean, does he even have any castable spell in his hand at this point? I see a Kimbalder, I see a Liliana, I see a Balan Reveler, I see Ligamistos. I see Lightning Bolt.
I mean, Lightning Bolt doesn't really achieve anything on this battlefield, though, right now.
Yeah, he has 2 of them. So it's going to keep delaying the Wormcoil Engine. But that Bird wins. It's going to do a lot of work for Pozo here.
Yeah, double Lightning Bolt to deal with a Wormcoil Engine. Yes, there's still 2 worms in play, but 1 lifelink and 1 death touch is not nearly as scary as all of them in 1 scary piece.
Jose in a lot of trouble.
This has been quite the game here. I would love to talk to Sebastian after the match about this game. How did he feel after after his scrap trawlers got taken away? What would he have put his chances of winning at that exact moment?
Yeah, Perzo, he's such a calm guy. I'm sure he didn't feel any pressure at that. He just said, no way, Jose. I'm going to keep playing this game. I'm going to keep coming back, and I'm going to fight to find a victory.
Quite literally, no way, Jose. Jose Echeverria on the other side of the battlefield. No way that he can cast any spells with the lands that he's got working with right now. Tough old spot he finds himself in. Activating a Terrarion there, Sebastian Pozzo. Just digging. He's got so many artifacts that let him cycle through his deck. It means that even though there are only singleton copies of some of his sideboard cards, he can reasonably expect to, in a drawn-out game, find them.
Yeah, so the relevant cards for him would be his Lightning Bolts, Pyroclasm that I think he brought in, Gyro Ether Grid, and a Mirror Retriever to find a Wormcoil Engine back from the graveyard if Jose finds a way to kill it.
So here come the big attacks. Just a block from a Spirit there from Jose. He wants to protect his life total where he can. Meanwhile, Pozzo's life total at 24. That's going to take a lot of beating down.
No third land for Jose.
This has been a truly awful draw. As we mentioned at the very top of this game, though, he kept a hand with Inquisition and Surgical Extraction in the hope of getting rid of one of the key combo pieces. He achieved exactly that. So, in many respects, he couldn't have hoped for much better in the early game than he got. The fact that he's not found a third land at this point, yes, that's a little improbable. But you know what? This is what you sign up to when you keep a one-land hand.
Yeah, if you have Surgical Extraction in your sideboard for its matchup, I think that's exactly the kind of play you want to do. It's fine to risk not drawing lands if you have that knockout punch in your hand. So really can't blame Jose for the hand he kept.
So
alright, so KCI for Sebastian. He's going to use it to draw cards of the Icar Wellsprings if he wants to.
Another Chromatic Sphere. Now the Sphere not quite as exciting to sacrifice as the Star, because with the Star, anytime it goes to the graveyard you draw a card. With the Sphere, drawing a card is linked to the mana ability. That's a really messy thing from the rules standpoint, which is the reason that Chromatic Star even got made. As things stand though, Crackland Ironworks here, even if it just says, oh, I've got a great way of sacrificing Icar Wellsprings, that's pretty good.
Imagine how Modern would be different if you only had one of those effects instead of having both Chromatic Sphere and Chromatic Star.
Yep. Tron would be different. Decks like this would be different. Decks like the Lantern Control, in some cases, would be different also. This is
all the fan favorites.
Yeah. I mean, that plus the ability to use Ancient Stirrings to find the right things, there's a lot of glue holding those various decks together.
Right.
So Sebastian here, he can dig an awful lot with this Crackland Ironworks. He's got enough mana that he's going to be able to successfully use his little baubles there to draw additional cards.
Yeah, if he does find Gear Parade Grid, he's going to have colored mana to cast it.
The minute that he makes green mana, he immediately finds something to spend it on in Ancient Stirrings. It'll be a bit of a kick in the teeth if he does see the Ether Grid here off the Ancient Stirrings, because he would not be able to pick it up. But he sees an Inventor's Fair, and that's a pretty good pickup also.
Yeah, more way to gain lives. You can find a Mirror Retriever to retrieve that Wormcoil Engine if it ever dies. So it's still a fine card for him. He still has more draws good this turn. KCI going off without a Scrap Trawler.
And why not? Draws into an Engineered Explosives. That a great way of dealing with any tokens on the battlefield, as if Sebastian's that bothered. I mean, right now he's more concerned about them being speed bumps for his Wormcoil Engine than he is about them actually attacking him. 23 life, that's a lot of damage that he would need to deal with those Spirit tokens.
Yeah, Engineered Explosives effectively dealing 18 points of damage, maybe more.
All right, so what do we have next in the Pozzo show here? 2 mana floating, he can potentially do a few more things. That Buried Ruin just sort of sat there if he wants it. Maybe this is a good time to put a stop to these shenanigans, at least for this turn.
Yeah,
Sebastian.
any card that
let Jose play for a bit.
I think maybe he goes through one more cycling because he would be able to use the mana for that Gear Parade Grid. Right, so you're going for Winter's Fair.
Oh, we might even get a chance to see how close he was. Oh, the Aether Grid was literally the next card. If he had happened to use the one more draw effect from that Chromatic Sphere, he would have been able to draw into it. I mean, as it is, it may well be that that's gilding the lily a little bit. He doesn't necessarily need it when he's got Wormcoil Engine and so little opposition on the other side of things.
Yeah, another consideration is that he had put cards in the bottom of his library with the Ancient Stirrings, and now with his shuffle, his Other Grid could literally be the last card, for instance.
Still more attacks from Sebastian Pozzo, winning the unwinnable game.
Wow.
That's going to be the headline for at least these semi-finals, and if he makes it to the finals, this might well be the game that he talks about as being kind of the turning point. When this sort of game works out for you, well, you know what, that means that you must be destined to do something great.
Yeah, incredible victory for Pozzo. Clutching it from a very difficult position, and now not only he's going to tie the semifinals, he's going to be able to watch coverage later and see myself looking up on camera, so just extra satisfaction for him.
He somehow managed to extract extra value from that win. He doesn't even know about it yet. Oh, this is going to be one that we're going to have run and run. Sebastian Pozzo finding a way through in an incredibly tough situation. We really can't stress enough how much more difficult it is to win for this Ironworks deck once it's completely stranded from its combo.
Incredible.
I mean, if Jose Echeverria had hit a second land on turn 2, a third land on turn 3, that game would not have been close.
I mean, I don't know. I'm scared of, even calling those games as not being close for KCI. I'm kind of scared of what this deck can do. No, but yeah, I mean, I'm just joking around. Realistically, the 2 lands in his first 4 or 5 draw steps would have been enough for Jose.
So Jose, at least, he has 2 consolations here. The first one, he won game 1, which means that we actually get a game 3.
Right.
The second one is, from having got a chance to resolve Surgical Extraction early, he got a chance to see exactly how Sebastian Pozzo had sideboarded, and that means that going into game 3, he has about as much information as he could reasonably hope to. Now, that doesn't mean to say there won't be small spot changes for Pozzo, but honestly, I don't think those changes will be nearly as big as what Jose can potentially re-engineer going into this final game.
Yeah, I think Pyroclasm and Galvanic Blasts are 2 cards that Jose maybe isn't sure if Pozzo is bringing in just by looking at his deck list. Now he knows for sure. Pozzo, of course, making the heads-up play of shuffling cards around between his deck and sideboard, between game 2 and game 3, just to keep Jose guessing a little more.
Yeah, absolutely no harm in doing that. I mean, especially in this round where it's completely untimed, you might as well move things around a little bit, at least give your opponent the opportunity to think themselves into a corner. And Pozzo here, I would be running around the table, banging my chest, having won that game, because that was ridiculous.
He's really a well-balanced individual, very, very calm guy.
Well, we'll find out how calm he is if he wins this tournament. I'm kind of hoping that we're going to see a roar, at least from the crowd, if not from him himself, if he picks up the trophy. But there's a little bit of time before that. This is, of course, just our semi-finals. We'll have a finals after this with the winner of this match and, of course, the winner of Leonardo Giucci against Tiago Casasanta. That's Abzan Traverse against Tron on the other side of things.
Yeah, so that Abzan Traverse is doing a lot of work this tournament. We saw it winning from some very difficult positions. The power of the 2-box, the power of going discard into Tarmogoyf for Green Flare, having access to Liliana, having access to powerful white sideboard cards. There's really a lot this deck can do. I really had a good time watching Juan Manuel de Praz at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan. He had a version with blue back then, which meant he had access to Hostage Taker, which I thought was a well-positioned card. Just, there's 2 boxes, 2-box decks. You can kind of show, the creator's creativity when fine-tuning their deck list. Just very customizable deck.
All right, Jose Echeverria there, just sort of the 1,000-yard stare, thinking about how that last game went.
Yeah, I mean,
he just has to recenter himself and just play a good game of Magic this last one. He has the tools to win this. It's just a matter of piecing them together.
I mean, I think he can be certain that he made a good decision with his keep. That's kind of situation that he has to think beforehand if he's going to keep his in or not. And I mean, it was a good call. I mean, at some point you have to accept that he didn't make a mistake. It's just variance that sometimes is part of the game.
Occasionally those strange draws show up. We've all had them. It's just a matter of when they happen, and certainly them happening in the semi-finals of a Grand Prix is unfortunate. But another way of looking at it, if the exact same thing happened in round 9, you might not even make the top 8. So if you have to choose where this weird stuff happens, in some respects, the later the better.
Yeah, I mean, that game is already gone. The worst thing that he could do to himself right now is just think too much about it and start to feel frustrated and start to feel that he deserves to draw land or something like that. That's kind of, negative thoughts that could impact his judgment for game 3. Now we see, look his body language. He's smiling. He just shook with his hand. He seems calm. He seems confident. I think he's in a good mental state for that final game.
All right. We did see a couple of little smiles from both these players. They're enjoying being under the spotlight, and there are a substantial number of players watching on the big screen these semi-finals taking place. I'm sure we'll hear a roar from the crowd around the time that this match is decided, and by the time that we get to the finals, oh boy, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think both of them have a lot of friends here. It's going to go either way for the crowd.
1-1. This will be the rubber game between these two. Sebastian Pozzo on Ironworks, Jose Echeverria on Mardu Pyromancer. Mardu Pyromancer, the only deck of which there were 2 in the top 8. Just running down again the different decks that we found in our top 8. There was Vinicius Karam on Affinity. He was the number 1 seed. Abzan Traverse defeated him in the hands of Leonardo Giucci. Daniel Cacheta, he's on Amulet Titan against Thiago Casasanta on Tron. Tron winning that one. So other semi-finals going on, Abzan Traverse versus Tron. Then Sebastian Pozzo on his KCI list, he defeated Breno Magalhães on Red-Green Eldrazi. And finally, well, we had our Mardu Pyromancer mirror, that being Jose Luis Echeverria Paredes against Fernando Gonzalez, also on Mardu Pyromancer. How did I do my pronunciation there?
Perfect.
I'll take it.
After we can hear you're natural at both speaking Portuguese last names and Spanish last names.
It's been a long time coming. Everyone has to have their own talents. I can't necessarily go off with a Crocline and Ironworks worth a damn, but you know what? I can pronounce a few names here and there.
Hey, who can? Just Bozo apparently and Matt S.
Well, it looks like we might have a little bit of an update for our other match going on between Tron and Abzan, just as these players finishing up their shuffling. It turns out we do already have a finalist now. It is Leonardo Giucci here, who I believe is on our Abzan list. So it's going to be Abzan Traverse in the finals against one of these 2 lists. Abzan, definitely not a list that was high on many people's radars for this event. It's kind of, in some respects, working on the kind of the same axis as some of the Jund lists, trading in red for white. You get the likes of Siege Rhino in there if you want. You get your Lingering Souls and so on and so forth. Path to Exile if you want it.
Yeah, so Willie likes to compare every deck in existence to Jund. He's going to say that Abzan is Jund, and he's going to say that Mardu Pyromancer is also Jund. So in the finals, we could have Jund Mirror to figure out which one is the best Jund deck.
I wonder what the mirrors in Willie Adel's house look like if that's the way that he feels. It may very well be that it's a cartoon fun house if those are the kind of mirrors that he believes to be the case. But we are kicking things off here in Game 3, and we have an Inquisition of Kozilek from Jose Echeverria. Let's see what he is looking at. There is Ancient Stirrings, a Mind Stone, a Terrarian, Inventor's Fair alongside... can't quite make out what one of those other lands is. Possibly a Darksteel Citadel, and finally a Chromatic Star. Can't take the lands anyway, of course. Just needs to worry himself with the spells here. But this is Sebastian Pozzo on a mulligan to 6, and being forced to discard here, he's definitely going to feel that. Ancient Stirrings, a very powerful way of drawing cards, but doing so on turn 1 is going to be a little bit tricky without that Chromatic Star or Terrarian to fix the mana a little bit. A few reasonable options here, and oh, thank goodness, we do have multiple lands in Jose Echeverria's hand here for our Game 3. We're going to have a real game. Ancient Stirrings getting taken, and Ancient Stirrings, one of the pieces of glue holding together a whole bunch of decks in this format.
Yeah, that's a card that is more likely to find one of the engine pieces. Puzu drew a KCI, so that's a step 1. It's going to have a lot of access to a lot of mana in the next turns.
Yeah, Terrarian on turn 1. We saw it before. We're seeing it again. Just a good solid one to play early, given that it does come into play tapped. And in principle, you might want to be sacrificing it to do cool things with your mana and drawing into the bits of your combo. But Bloodstained Mire on turn 2. We have 2 mana. Can we get to 3? Anyone knows. Just a whole host of sideboard answers in principle here for Jose Echeverria. He just needs to be able to deploy them in a reasonable fashion. He's got red mana, he's got white mana, he's got black mana.
So Young Pyromancer, I think would be his ideal turn 2 play in this matchup.
Yeah, get that threat on the board, and then every subsequent disruption spell that you play is generating value in elementals, meaning that the amount of time that Sebastian Pozzo has to work with diminishes. It looks like there is a Young Pyromancer in hand. It's exactly what he goes for. So far, so good. I mean, from here, things looking all right for both these players, I would say. They've both got a draw where they're able to actually achieve things in these early stages of the game. Inventor's Fair coming down for Pozzo. He's got a Mox Opal. He has 3 artifacts thanks to Darksteel Citadel. So actually 3 mana available for him on his turn 2 if he wants it. Getting down a Mind Stone here doesn't seem too shabby. Potentially even get the Chromatic Star as well and mean that you have as many opportunities to draw cards as possible. The one dark side of that is it leaves you exactly 1 card left in hand, meaning that if there is going to be a Kolaghan's Command or a Liliana, you could lose that Croclan Ironworks.
Yeah, so he chose to play the Chromatic Star. It's a more efficient use of his mana, and say Jose finds another Inquisition of Kozilek, now he's not going to see any targets in Pozzo's hand. Pressure on by Jose. Now the attack. Let's see how many tokens he can make this turn. It's going to make a huge difference on the number of turns that Sebastian will have in this game.
Well, there is the 3rd land, so he could potentially spell this turn.
Yeah, that's one way to start it.
Faithless Looting, make an elemental. Finds a Kolaghan's Command. Not going to be able to cast that one this turn, but almost certainly a card that he is going to be intending on keeping here. Such a high power card in this matchup.
Yeah, pressure plus Kolaghan's Command. It means it's almost as good as it gets for Jose. He still has a lot of good draws in his deck. You could find the Cabal. You could find more Artifact Removal. I mean, it's basically all life draws from him on at this point. The power of sideboarding.
This is interesting there, using the Wear Half of Wear Tear now to deal with a Mind Stone, holding back the mana a little bit of Sebastian Pozzo and dealing with the Mind Stone at a point where it cannot be sacrificed to draw a card. The best that it can do here is make mana to sacrifice one of those other artifacts if Sebastian Pozzo is in a card drawing frame of mind.
Yeah, since Jose has that Kolaghan's Command and he's wanting to keep mana up for that in the next few turns, he's just using his mana right now.
Worth noting that the Tear Half of Wear Tear, one of the few ways of dealing with enchantments that Jose Echeverria has, decides to put that to one side as Sebastian Pozzo draws a forest, so he can cast that Croclan Ironworks this turn if he wants it. If he does so, then he's got 2 card draws following the Ironworks in order to find something to really get his engine going.
So is this a good time for him to go off? Shoots down for Jose. He's not going to be able to respond with anything that costs mana. Surgical Extraction certainly imposes his mind.
I mean, I guess that the real question is, how much better does it get if you wait?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he has to go for it and just try to find his scrap draw in his next 2 draw steps.
I mean, this is certainly not an exciting time to try and go off, in as much as 2 additional draw steps is not a ton to work with. However, Jose Echeverria, we've seen that there's a lot of different ways that he can disrupt. If he just untaps and has mana available, he can potentially make all sorts of nasty things happen. Terraria and get sacrificed. That's a Darksteel Citadel. That's not going to be a huge amount of help here.
It's one of the situations that maybe if it's game 1 and Pozzo can count on Jose having a lot of dead cards in his hand, maybe it's more inclined to wait. But now, I mean, he knows how disruptive Jose's deck can be, so he went for it with the Terrarian. Now he's considering sacrificing the Chromatic Star as well. I mean, I think if he went for the first time, he's pressed to go it again, but Pozzo, of course, way more experienced than me with the deck, is going to make the right call no matter what.
I mean, one of the nice things about the KCI deck is that, at least in principle, you can try and go off, fizzle, and it's not as if your entire game plan's over. Double Darksteel Citadel, though, off the top. Not enough to get anything going, and we just see Sebastian Pozzo pass here. This, we talked about shields being down to Jose Echeverria. That was a choice that he made to enable to get things going last turn. He did not get punished for it, and now he gets to follow up. He's got Colligan's command to destroy the Croc Clan Ironworks and force a discard from Pozzo. Pozzo very short on action now.
Yeah, he's not messing around, not trying to tweak Sebastian to going off and trying to stop him with the combo. Just use it right now. Doesn't give Pozzo more options to hold cards in hand.
Mere Retriever, a nice pickup here for Sebastian Pozzo. Might as well get that one down. As and when it dies, it can get back Croc Clan Ironworks. You can potentially get something going once more.
Okay, so say if Jose doesn't have a way to kill that Croc Clan Ironworks in hand, does he even attack here? I think it's an interesting choice that he has to make.
Yeah, I mean, the Mere Retriever, Pozzo kind of wants it to die. Here comes Bedlam Reveler. Its cost greatly reduced by the number of spells in the graveyard, and Lingering Soul's a perfectly fine card to be discarding here. The second Bedlam Reveler, it was always going to get discarded, so it doesn't really hurt to have to discard that. And 3 new cards for Jose here. And I guess that this is Echeverria saying, well, if I don't attack, how am I ever meant to win? Gets stuck in with the elementals, holds back Young Pyromancer, which makes sense, just he doesn't want to actually lose a real card in any kind of a trade here.
Yeah, so say Pozzo returns a KCI with his hand. What would be the next card he's willing to draw? That would be an Ico Wellspring that would have to find a scrap trawler, and then he tries to work his way from there. So, yeah, it's kind of a long shot. Pozzo's gonna... Yeah, he's not even gonna bother blocking. He's gonna wait a few more turns, potentially use his inventor's fair, and see what his draw step gives him.
Yeah, this a really interesting position. At every turn in this match, Pozzo has been under pressure. He's never been able to just sort of casually let damage go by and hope that he's going to be able to put together a win over a number of turns. He's been able to having to do it all in one go, and that's a rough proposition no matter which way you slice it. And Pozzo here, activating his Inventor's Fair, he's going to go looking for an artifact of some description.
Oath Faithful. Okay. Hero from Game 2, Warm Coil Engine.
Yeah, sometimes your engine deck is just about a Worm Coil engine rather than anything more complicated, and plays a second Inventor's Fair after that. Given that that was his land for the turn, it's legendary, he was going to have to do something with it. Fetching up a Worm Coil engine seems as good a play as any, and I believe he's got another card in hand as well, so he's safe from some forms of discard here.
Oh, so the card he did have, he just ended up playing it before passing the turn. That's the Inventor's Fair.
My apologies, yeah.
So Liliana or Killigan's Command would be able to nuke that card out of his hand.
Now, I'm intrigued. It looks like there's a Blood Moon still in Jose Echeverria's deck. I'm not quite sure what the purpose of that one is in this matchup. Can you enlighten me?
I think the main use is shutting down the utility from the Inventor's Fair.
And I guess Buried Ruin as well is another.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, good call.
It's not like you're doing what you would normally do with Blood Moon, which is to say making it so that your opponent's color and quantity of mana is impacted. It's more the quality of other things that these lands can do. Okay,
so Jose potentially pushing through 5 points of damage depending on how Pozzo chooses to block.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Young Pyromancer coming in a little suspicious. No additional spells for additional prowess, though.
It means that Jose maybe doesn't have any more instants or sorceries in his hand that's willing to cast this turn.
Or he's got a discard spell and he wants to wait until Pozzo has put something relevant back in his hand. And actually, attacking with Young Pyromancer was the kind of bait that was going to make sure that the Mere Retriever blocked.
Yeah, it's smart play from him, if that's the case.
Yeah, really interesting set of attacks. And if it is that Jose Echeverria set a trap here, then that's some high-level play going on.
So Pozzo's options here would be KCI, which means he could cast his Worm Coil Engine without the need to tap deck 6 mana source. Or he could return something that would let him draw more cards, like a Mind Stone, or like a Royal Springs, or One of the Stars.
Well, I mean, I guess that the thinking, if there is a discard spell there's already a Wormcoil Engine in hand that would be a good target for discard. So one discard spell, to be honest, there was always going to be a target for. It's a matter of whether or not there's 2 targets for discard, or 2 discard spells here to be able to punish both of these cards. I mean, Jose now has the choice of everything he could possibly want in terms of having a good target for this Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I imagine he's wondering if Peugeot is likely to find a combo if he's allowed to keep that KCI in hand. But that Wormcoil Engine, I mean, is such a juicy target for him to take with Thoughtseize right here.
I mean, I guess another good reason to take Crockline Ironworks versus anything else is that it requires double Thoughtseize to get both those cards out of hand. If an Inquisition was the second discard spell, it's just not going to do it. Now, obviously, there could also be a Kolaghan's Command, which would be able to get that last card out of hand, a Liliana, but you've got to play to your outs.
Yeah. I mean, who can blame Echeverria for taking the Wormcoil after the what happened in Game 2, right?
Yeah, so now he casts his Blood Moon, passes, and Sebastian Pozzo draws into a Buried Ruin, which is now functionally a mountain.
Yeah, he's at 7 life. Jose has 6 damage on board, plus a lingering so that he can flashback.
Massive roar from the crowd. Jose Echeverria defeating the apparently unassailable Ironworks combo deck. Sebastian Pozzo with a truly historic win in Game 2. But you know what? You do not win a match for only winning 1 game, not unless it times out. And we are playing untimed games in our top 8. So it is in fact going to be a matchup between Abzan Traverse in the hands of Leonardo Giucci on one side of things. He will be up against Jose Luis Echeverria Paredes on the other side of things with Mardu Pyromancer. We have 2 Mardu Pyromancers started in our top 8. One of them made it all the way through to the finals. And if you've got Ironworks, that does not mean that you're automatically winning a tournament unless apparently you're Matt Nass. So good things for the Mardu Pyromancers in the field. Sad times for Pozzo, though I don't think it'll be too sad. As you mentioned, a very happy little chap. And you know what? We're going to have our finals soon enough for you. It'll be Riley Knight, it'll be Paulo Vitor, Damon De Rosa. It'll be after these messages.